Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Mind Sculptors podcast. I am your host, Callahan, and today we have a wonderful show lined up for you with special guest streamer Manacurves, otherwise known as Chase, will be joining me to discuss our opinions on Unfinity. And we're not going to be reviewing the set, but we're going to mostly be talking about our opinions on the set as a whole. And just kind of how we feel about the set and why it kind of let us down on a few different aspects. We also get into some fun Vorthos things later on in the episode, so if you enjoy story predictions, stick around for that as well. Also want to thank our patrons for all the support that you have been giving and continue to give. Your support is what enables us to be able to continue to do the show. I know that I have not been doing a great job of holding up my end here and uploading stuff to Patreon for you guys, but I really am trying to do that. I did intend to release this episode uncut on Patreon. However, on Thursday, which I believe was the day after we recorded this, I got wicked food poisoning. So I have been pretty out of commission for the last 2 or 3 days. So that has been quite fun. But I do intend to get that stuff going back up for you guys again. And hopefully we can have all of that going soon. But if you are interested in joining the Sculpty family and do want to support the show, we really do appreciate that. You can head on over to patreon.com/the Mind Sculptors, and you can find more information there. It would also be time to check in on our Apple Podcast ratings this week, but no new Apple Podcast ratings. So if you leave us a new rating over there on Apple Podcasts, a new 5-star rating, and we will read it here on the show. So make sure to head on over there and give us a 5-star rating if you haven't already. With all that said, let's go ahead and jump into my conversation with Chase. Because we used to do it where I would have a script in front of me while we were doing it, and it would just make the introductions, starting the conversations really awkward. And it's just if I just start recording while we're just talking like people, it sounds more like a conversation.
Yeah, because, it turns out people like real things.
Yeah. Funny how that works.
I know. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Now me, I'm fake.
Yeah, I'm the fakest person out there.
I'm the fakest person you'll ever meet.
I just yell at people on Twitter and call people bitches and stuff. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I just hyper focused on that for a little bit. And then.
Are you me? Are we the same person? Because I'll be I'll hyper focus on this one thing on Twitter. Yep. And then I go out on my balcony and I'm like, life is real.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happened to me last night is I got hyper focused on the database drama. And then I sat down and Cassidy's she got home from school and she was like, let's play a board game together. And I was like, sure. And I had just bought Ascension yesterday. So I was like, do you want to play Ascension? And so we spent 2.5 hours playing Ascension together. And then we got done playing. And I was just I might have overreacted a little bit. I stand by my point, but I might have worded this poorly.
Yeah, I feel that hardcore. Like that one thing from Adventure Time. My favorite thing is when Jake throws his favorite cup out of the window, and he goes, "You see this? This is my favorite cup." And then he throws it out of the window, and she shatters the window, and he goes, "And now it's out of my life, and it's not real, and it doesn't matter anymore." And I'm like, God, I need to adopt this. This is good. I like this thinking.
Oh my goodness. Well, that thinking is kind of how I have been feeling about this unset, because this unset, I know we talked about this a little bit when I was on your stream earlier this week, is just it's not landing for whatever reason. And I mean, I have my theories for it. And, I said this on your stream. I'm not the target audience for unsets, and I like kind of know that. So when they announced that they were doing it on unset, I immediately was like, yeah, whatever, you know, new unset, cool, whatever. And then they were like, oh, but there's also gonna be eternal legal cards in here, and I was like,
okay,
but why? So now I have to interact with this, and I said on Twitter, I was like, I'm not going to do a set review because what it's going to end up being is 2 hours of Pongo and Cobblepot trying to evaluate the cards, like seriously, and me just being an absolute grumpy bitch because I have to talk about it. But you are somebody who enjoys unsets.
I do. I like them.
And I was very, it's interesting to hear from people who like unsets because, you know, you were kind of talking about, you know, it just doesn't seem right, you know. So tell us a little bit about your feelings on unsets and all that.
I love unsets because they're stupid, and I mean that in the best of ways. I love that they're stupid. I love unsets because you can see a clear path from an unset to the future of Magic, and I never really paid attention to that until I started looking more into card design. How a lot of things that we've seen in the past have slowly come into standard sets of the present. Like I brought this up, you know, multiple times because it's just the easiest one to bring up off the top of my head. But like with die rolling, you had a lot of that in the past, and now you see it present in AFR and Commander Legends Baldur's Gate. And I like that you can have a weird sort of place where like the rules don't matter, and you get to see like what designers want to do and have fun with, and also make it sort of like a love letter to like the most enfranchised players, like having everything just be really stupid and wacky. It's like the biggest inside joke, but for Magic players. Like Unglued is like perfection for me, because you have stuff like Blacker Lotus or like Mox Lotus or like Chaos Confetti. Like they're stupid,
but they're iconic. Han's run in that set, or was that the second unset?
I want to say that's the second unset.
Okay.
Which I also have feelings about because that unset is very weirdly sexual. There's a lot of but like,
I mean, it was the mid-thousands, right? Like everything in the 2000s were like oddly sexual, right? Like,
I mean, I guess.
Do you not remember the Dukes of Hazzard remake they made where it was just like, why is this like weirdly sexual?
I think it was in middle school, so I don't know. I'm an infant. I'm youthful. For context, Unglued came out when I was 2 years old.
Wait,
just like as a hair of context. Yeah.
So what year were you born then?
96. Unglued came out, I think, in 98.
You're not that much younger than me. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. I'm 93, late 93. So.
Oh, so you're 93 years old.
Yes.
So not much younger than you.
But yeah, so they came out, and obviously like Magic itself is older than both of us, but like it's interesting because I've tried to play them before, but like one of the things that maybe this is just because of like ADHD and all these things, but I really like the structure of how the rules of Magic are just like, here are how things work. And then unsets are just like, yeah, fuck that. And and so
I like that.
So from a play design perspective, like it obviously, you know, as you said, is a place for them to play around with stuff. But when we look at this new set, and I kind of said this before, and I've said this on Twitter too, I think, is this set feels like it's straddling a line, and it really comes through, I feel like, in the cards that came out, because there's a lot of stuff where it's like I think the sticker cards are like a really good example of this, where the sticker cards are, in theory, a really neat card design space, in my opinion. Like, that's a really cool card design area, especially in the area where, or in the era where everybody's using card sleeves, like, stickers, whatever. But the implementation of that is add X red mana, where X is the number of vowels in that. Like, that feels like a weird thing to have in Legacy.
Yeah, that is a weird thing there.
Right.
It's weird for me because I like unsets because they are so self-contained and they are meant to be a place to like get messy and be stupid and like have fun with that. And because I said like it's like really good place for design space, you're allowed to do things that you're not allowed to do, with the possibility of maybe a couple things escaping through in the future, in sets down the line. When you have an unset that is also eternal legal, it removes that liminal space of playtest, and it kind of it removes the playtest part and it goes, okay, play. There's no test. It's already out there. And it feels very weird to have that sort of interaction. Like, I'm looking at a handful of these cards just on my screen right now. And I'm like, how would I feel about this if I was like, I don't play Legacy, but if I were to experience this, like, a lot of these cards have to do with stickers, like putting stickers on them. How would I feel? How would you feel? Some of them involve switching text boxes. I mean, it was a rare legal. It's a blue card. God forbid if I remember the name.
Exchange of words.
Thank you so much for being prepared.
I got you.
You exchange like text boxes, and that's interesting. That's also very insanely difficult to track.
Yeah.
In any sort of game space, and that's one thing I had a bit of an issue with in the set. Like, if it's an unset, you know that you're going to be drafting, so you're playing 1v1. If I'm playing Commander, it's going to be hard to remember if I have 3 other opponents or more opponents, or if I'm in a competitive setting and, like the game is contingent on me remembering this information. It just seems like a little weird to me. I'm not like saying like, oh, it's the worst thing to ever happen, because a lot of these cards, while they may be eternal legal in like these other formats, I can guarantee you're probably not going to see airy elephant pop up because no one wants to remember what an attraction does, or, no one wants to like put a sticker on their card and possibly like leave residue on the sleeve. I know that Shivam had recently fiddled around with some Unfinity and had made a post saying, like, hey, these stickers are fine, their card's safe. And that's totally chill. But like, things do age over time. And like, what if you forget like a sticker on it, or like, what if like 5 years from now, if like the adhesive does something weird? I mean, like, it's a very interesting design space, but the impact can kind of be all over the place. I don't think it's going to like ruin any format per se, but it does throw a bit of a wrench into the concept of what an unset was supposed to be and how it impacts how our perception of it down the line and how we play the game.
Yeah, it's very interesting to look at the cards, because I was originally, when I was watching the previews, I was just like bracing for impact, because I was like, they're going to print something dumb that's going to be a chase card. And believe it or not, they really didn't. I mean, like, Comet is kind of a broken Magic card. Space Balerin is a card that, you know what? Actually, let's talk about this Jace card for a second, because I know a lot of people like to be like, oh, this isn't that hard to track, but that's not entirely true. Once they arrive in multiples.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, so in how are you supposed to, so in, these are effects that in digital spaces, I think, work really, really well. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, in a digital space, it's really easy to keep track of these things. Perpetual is an easy mechanic that you can track. Those are things that I understand in a digital space. they're much harder to keep track of in paper, and especially in Commander. And the reason I think it's important to frame this not in the context of Legacy, because I don't think really Legacy's cared too much about the set overall.
Yeah.
But in the context of Commander, one, because there's a handful of cards that are relevant for Commander, but two, because of the fact that their marketing literally is, hey, these cards are Commander legal. And how do you keep track of this in a Commander game over webcam?
Yeah. Honestly, I was building on stream last night an Urza deck, and it was Super Friends, and my chat was like, put Space Bellerin in there for the memes, and I was like, let me take a look at this card, because I remember, like the sky was falling about this card, and I was like, maybe I had it wrong. I took a peek, I read it, and I went, no, I don't want to invest the time into this. This hurts my head. And the reason why is just because like it is so hard to track, like unless you have your opponents get an infinite tokens and write, it specifically in the corner and then put it smack dab on there. And it's going to be really hard to kind of parse. It also is a little bit interesting because do the sectors stay if Jace leaves? Does it matter? Right. Yeah. Like, are they outside of the game pieces? Are they even pieces? It doesn't say you put a counter, but it does say that you divide the battlefield, which is kind of interesting based on like stuff like Fact or Fiction, where like you take cards and then you put them into two piles. What does that do? What does that entail? I don't know.
It feels like, in my mind, it's attempting to. Have you played like Legends of Runeterra?
I have not. Everyone has told me to.
I've been playing a decent bit of like Legends of Runeterra recently, and basically what you do is there's like you have like battle lanes effectively, and so when you go to combat, you put creatures in battle lanes, and then your opponents will put creatures in front of them as they like come forward. The issue with doing that in Commander in Commander is there's 4 players, and one of the things I don't think people recognize enough is how much adding 2 people, adding 1 person to a game of Magic changes the dynamic of how a game of Magic is played.
I mean, you have to pay attention to multiple different things, multiple different board states, triggers. Even honestly, there are sometimes in a game of Commander where I literally will just go, I trust you. Like I like you put a lot of trust into your opponents because there's so much going on. If my opponent went, okay, I'm gonna flip Space Bellerin and he's going to turn into Ulamog, I'd be like, dope. Glad you could do it.
100% believe that. Yeah.
Legal, and I accept it. But it's, I don't know, when it comes to the sectors and, even like imagine like flickering Jace, because you can flicker permanents, flicker Jace. Do you re-sculpt the sectors? Can you have multiple sectors with different names? So can you have like 2 alphas, but on different sides of the board? I don't particularly know. I mean, and obviously like you can only get so much information from like, play testing this. I mean, that's what happens at Wizards when they design a card, they play test these things. But I don't know, there's a lot of questions I have, and scrolling on Scryfall, typically there'll be like little rules explanations sometimes, and there aren't any.
There's like one of the things that also has been coming up with the set is the confusion on what cards are legal and not.
Yeah.
Because first of all, Wizards has how many times have they've already done it multiple times where they were like, no, this card actually isn't eternal legal or something like that.
3. I want to say 3.
Yeah. like that's already been confusing. So I mean, like, I don't understand. Like, I'm curious. What is your theory on why it is the way it is?
I think actually that they've talked about this before when Unstable was coming out, how they weren't going to, I take this with a grain of salt because this is like in the memory of like 3 years ago, and I was a completely different person in terms of like headspace, and also COVID happened. Right. So, grain of salt here. But I could have sworn that I heard around somewhere through the community that there was an issue with wanting to do more unsets because of the cost of printing silver bordered and black bordered. So they had Steam Flogger Boss as part of Unstable, which was a black border card featured in Unstable. And then you had the very dope Basic Lands, 10 out of 10, love them. Mm-hmm. But apparently you could not print the Steam Flogger Boss, which was black bordered, and the basics on the same sheet as you would silver bordered, because there was a whole different printing process, which was an increased sort of cost from what I heard. So I think that's the reason why, genuinely, is just because it was a lot of effort and a lot of cost. And the removal of the silver border reduces that, because now you can just do the basics and everything on the same printing sheet, printing press, without, having to do an increase in price. Because I really don't think that they would have to do much to change the holo stamp, other than have a different like little knob or button to like emboss it. I don't know how they do it, but that's how I imagine it, is they go right, and then it's done. I genuinely think that it was a cost thing, which is really disappointing for me, because I like silver bordered for a number of reasons. Number one, it is a very, very, it looked nice.
It's iconic.
It's iconic, but it's also a very strong visual cue. I see that card, I go, it's not legal.
Yep.
Because according to the Commander RC, they define like legality a lot based on border, which is why you technically cannot play gold border cards, which are those like little like tournament cards back in the day, like with like Guy's Cradle has like a little signature on there, which is still like $300, which is crazy, but I digress. I really think that it was just a cost thing. And so to go from a very strong, iconic visual cue to a teeny little dot. And to be quite honest, the holo stamp is the last thing I notice about a card when I open a rare or when I pull a mythic or something. And it's already such a small piece. I mean, it's probably smaller than like the tip of my fingernail. And then to have it go from a oval to a tiny little acorn is very interesting. And saddening, unfortunately.
They also, like, one of the things that's important to note with that is that, like, not only is holo stamps are only on what's it called? They're only on rares in mythics. So now there are holo stamps on also like commons, and like I will say, as far as like the commons in this, it does help differentiate those a little bit, like commons and uncommons, because if I see like a holo stamp on an uncommon or a common, I'm like, oh, okay, like that shouldn't be there. But as far as like rares go, like it's very easy to miss, and it's just, you have a much more charitable reading of that situation than I do. My tinfoil hat theory is that it's not a secret that unsets have had diminishing returns every time, where they have sold worse and worse and worse. And I think that I do think like the cost thing is a part of that. But I also think part of that was, if you're going to do this again, then you got to be able to sell it. And the design team was like, oh, well, maybe if we make some of the cards Eternal legal, people will buy it so they can put them in their Eternal decks or whatever. And I also know Mark Rosewater, and he has not hidden this, like deeply is upset that uncards are not allowed in Commander.
I'm alongside Morrow in that feeling. I'm sorry. I love uncards because Commander is like the format to like, not really worry about. And this is coming from a casual player. So like, I obviously do not have the CDH perspective of like, and enjoying the thrill of the build to the win. I like to win, but I also like to lose horribly.
Right.
So for me, I agree on that. I like silver bordered in Commander. I like that you have rule 0, but I think like rule 0 is kind of getting in the way of that. Because of the whole border thing. Cause I think, while I am saddened by it, I get why they're not allowed, because then I genuinely think it's kind of like that one little piece at the bottom of a Jenga where if you tug on it enough, eventually the whole tower falls down. I feel like once you kind of get rid of that, the whole ideology of what Commander is, especially like the rules that we have set aside, it'll probably impact that and it'll just be a snowball.
I also have a theory that like,
is it a game theory?
It's a theory about a game.
Okay.
So I guess it's technically a game theory. That like in my head, if you allow a silver border cards in Commander, I think the popularity of Commander probably dies real fast because a lot of people. It's interesting. There's just as many people who like unsets as there are who like don't like them.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. And I think that's like one of the things where it's like also if you're trying to manage a format, that having those cards legal in a format makes coming up with rules for said format an absolute nightmare, because like how do you resolve I don't know.
Shouting.
Yeah, like
shouting. That's part of it.
Yeah. Like it's one of those things where I understand it's casual, but I think rule 0 does a really good job of like, hey, if you want to do that, like, because I know plenty of people who are like, hey, I have a undeck. Do you mind if I play it? And if you play it against me, I'm probably going to be like, I'd rather you not, but But at the same time, I just don't love being forced to have to interact with something that I don't want to interact with, if that makes sense.
I mean, that makes total sense. Here's the thing. I'm a huge fan of unsets. I love unsets. I had in the past tense, because I kind of took it apart. I had an undeck. And at the same time, I completely understand why it's not legal, and I'm okay with it not being legal for a number of reasons, because there's a difference between, oh my God, like Stet. Stet is one, it's like a draconic librarian, whatever. And she keeps track of like letters in like your spell or something like that. Like that, I think is easier in terms of Commander legality than say, oh my God, there's like one, it's like flying head saucer where you put your head on the table, or where you shout and, you get, and however for like how long your shout echoes or something, or how many shirts you wear. There's one card from the set, like how many shirts you wear, pieces of clothing that you wear on your top or something. Like it just, there's a certain point where it's very difficult to track in a finite space, which is what Commander's supposed to be, is like, it's supposed to be, you're supposed to be creative and have fun and like do all these cool and fun zany things. But like, there's a point where I think it gets unstructured in a way, unstructured in a way that makes it not enjoyable, because I love the thrill of maybe breaking the rules once every year. Like in terms of like, oh, I'm gonna
breaking this out.
Who heard me say poof, and then I get to draw a card if you heard me say it. Versus me doing that every single game, that gets exhausting and it gets tedious, and I totally get why.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, and the whole thing is just interesting. I just look at these cards and I'm just like, why? One of the things that that I had brought up, and I've seen Pedro Cicada on Twitter bring up is the sticker cards where it's like blank the name cards. This is another aspect of the set that I think a lot of people did not think about until it was brought up, is how this set just kind of lifts a middle finger to non-English speaking languages. Because, you know, there's a lot of cards where you put a different name on it and then you count how many letters are in that. How do you do that? So you just don't get to do that in Portuguese or in Spanish or in, you know, whatever language it is that you're playing the game now. And now it forces you to have to play in English, which I think is kind of not chill.
And that's something I didn't even take into consideration, genuinely. Like I can see what they were going for with it genuinely, but again, that's also like, it's very difficult to track, especially with the stickers. Cause you know, I haven't had the opportunity to fiddle with Unfinity yet past, you know, looking at previews. So like, how do you have the stickers card set aside so you can track it? You know, everything like that. What is it even with other languages? Cause like, I don't know, like I minored in German and I'm like looking at line trespasser. And I'm like, that wouldn't make
any sense.
Yeah. It's a little weird. And that's, I think, something that's important to notice too, is like accessibility, which I think also kind of ties into the removal of the silver border. Is like you take away a very big visual cue and you put it down to like quite literally like a pinprick, like a little tiny dot. So you're kind of taking away this like sort of like very visual thing that you go, okay, I can see this. It's very large and in my face versus something small. And that can also come into play too. And I think like accessibility is something that probably, you know, I think it was taken in consideration, but like genuinely my focus is so, you know, on me and my American lifestyle that I didn't think. I was like, oh, whoa, that does make sense. Like this would be really difficult in a foreign language where the sentence structure is completely different.
Right. It's interesting. And that's like one of the things that was honestly the like biggest criticism I saw of it, where I was just like, oh yeah, that's kind of not awesome. But I mean, I don't know, like unsanctioned is fine. Like I don't mind any of the others. So it's like they're fine to exist, but it's just there's something about the set that just really just rustles my jimmies.
I mean, well, like there's a couple ways you can do. I mean, like it's just like, it's kind of like a trifle of things that are layered on top of each other that kind of, I think, attribute to that. There's the removal of that liminal design space where, you know, it's not going to really affect other formats. There's the removal of sort of these meta jokes that have become iconic in unsets. I mean, you have maybe 2 cards in this set that come to mind that do that, which is Gray Merchant of Alphabet, which is hysterical. And Form of Approach of the Second Sun, where you are the card or something. I think that's great. I think that's a great nod to Magic players.
I will say I did like the creature icing manipulator. I did think that was funny, but maybe not as funny as the other 2 you mentioned. But
yeah.
Anyhow,
but it's stuff like that that warms the heart and makes me excited for an unset, because it's like a nod to the people who are invested in this game. Like you can if you've been playing for like if you've been playing Commander for like a year and you pick it up, you're like, oh, I get this reference. This is to Gary, you know, iconic black card. And that's really cool and really funny. But because this set is so themed, and Charlotte actually brought this up, I wrote like a little mini Google Doc on Twitter. And Charlotte, she responded and she goes, I also had some similar thoughts. And she actually pointed out something that I didn't take into consideration, was the fact that this set is so themed, because it's so top down with that theming. It has removed the opportunity for those meta jokes to feel natural and have a place there. So they sacrificed these meta jokes that we've become used to for this strong top down theming that, while interesting and a visually very appealing, and I think is a really cool idea for playing, it feels like an Eternal Legal set with a couple joke cards rather than a joke set with Eternal Legal cards, which I think is how it should be.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It lost its spirit.
It lost its spirit.
It lost the spirit.
And
I know that sounds like really mean to say, but like it just doesn't have it. It just feels kind of like a mask of an unset almost, which is disappointing because I love them. But
it's interesting because like I think top-down design is like super cool and interesting. But like this top-down design feels like it's a different game. Does that make sense? Like that is one of the things that I feel about I mean, really unsets in general is that they feel like they're a different game that uses the base mechanics of how Magic works and then is completely different, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where it feels weird to try and push that into other formats. And unfortunately, because of I don't want to be overly negative about things because I don't like being overly negative, but it's just like it like I don't like to be like, oh, you know, Wizards is just doing this because of money, because, you know, they're a business. Obviously, everything that they do is financially motivated. But like having a set like this, having an unset feel, I think that might be my biggest qualm with it. The more that I'm like talking this and realizing this is that having an unset feel financially motivated feels wrong because they have never been financially motivated. They've always been a love letter to the community, a love letter to the game. And instead we have a kind of shell of that, if that makes sense.
I mean, we have to be honest and talk about the fact that there are shocks in this set. That is a main driving force for people to pick this up is shocks. And I'm not going to lie. I think the shocks they did are beautiful. I think the foiling treatment that they're going to do with it are stunning. And the prices and pre-order prices for these shocks definitely convey that 1,000%. Those are the main draws of shocks. And I've seen a couple people get boxes and you're supposed to only get like one shock per box. I heard based on like, you know, the rarity, but I've seen people get 3 to 4 and I'm like, that's a pretty good draw. Right. 3 to 4 shocks per box at what starting minimum, I think minimum 30. Don't quote me on this. Cause like you can probably like do like a little Scryfall search, but I think it's like minimum 30 for like a nice full art shock. That's stunning. That's a stunning treatment. And they're, I was about to say, oh, they're standard legal, but they're not because I don't play standard and that's not eternal legal. But yeah, it's a little disappointing for me because I am that target audience. Like like every time on Twitter, people are like, well, it wasn't made for you. It was made for me. Right. And I got a little bit bummed because it doesn't feel like it hits right. And that makes me sad too, especially when you see the people who design this, they put like a lot of hard work and time and love into it. I mean, Morrow like loves unsets. Like that's like you can see the passion and the joy about that. So like for that to not be conveyed by the community makes me feel awkward. It makes me feel bad, especially as a creator. I know that you said you don't want to be negative. I don't like being negative either. Right. I typically don't have a lot of negative things to say when it comes to Magic and card design and even sets, really. I think the only thing I've really said lately was like how double feature was a major letdown. Yeah. Because it was. But I didn't feel comfortable saying that. But for me, for this also is kind of like, oh my gosh, I struggled to find cards that I liked. And I actually, I canceled a pre-order for a box because I was like, it makes me sad because the only thing I would really want from this would be shocks and, pre-ordering $100 some odd box where I can only maybe get one feels like a letdown, especially when the rest of the set is kind of, in my opinion, very lackluster. I would rather just buy singles, which I don't like to do. I like to buy boxes. I think it's fun. I buy one per set, but for me, this one was a skip and that was very disappointing. I don't like doing that. I like to support my LGS. I like to support the people who make the game. And for me, it just fell flat on a lot of different levels. And That makes me feel icky.
Yeah, it's really disappointing to say the least. I will say I don't know if you saw this on Twitter. I tweeted when they revealed Space Bellerin. I was like, Wizards, I know I've been asking you for a Jace preview card forever, but thanks for not giving me this one.
I did see you post that. I actually did see you post that because this was, and I think the thing is, like, I think Space Bellerin was like the first day of previews. I remember it was Kyle Hill's card, and Kyle posted that. I remember waking up, I opened my phone. I was like, oh, wow, cool, a new Planeswalker. And then I saw literally, it's like that's one scene from Community where he's walking in with the pizza boxes and everything is on fire. And I just shut off my phone and I went, I'm going to take the day off today.
Yeah. There's sometimes taking time off of Twitter is a good choice.
All the time?
Yeah.
All the time.
Twitter's kind of the worst.
It is the worst.
But I mean, like, other than that, like, let me pivot the conversation then a little bit to something more positive. As far as sets that are coming out, you know, I know this weekend, I guess by the time it comes out, the Warhammer stuff is coming out. We've got Brothers War around the corner. Are you excited for the Warhammer stuff?
Yes, I'm excited. I don't know Warhammer. Okay. I don't play Warhammer. But I saw a Darkness reprint and my soul left my body like that one Winnie the Pooh gift. And I was like, I am ready. I slammed my money down and I was like, I don't care. I'm excited.
All I saw was as soon as I saw this, like at first I was like, oh, there's some cool reprints in here. I don't really care about any of the like new cards, you know, whatever. Then I saw the vehicles, or excuse me, I saw the new Buicks.
The Buicks,
the new Buick models are honestly quite precious. And then, so you were brewing Urza last night. What was it like brewing around that card?
It was weird because I think I chose genuinely the worst way to brew it.
Okay.
But I chose it because I wanted to. And that's my favorite thing about being a streamer is I can do things that I want to do and no one can tell me not to.
Fuck you, it's my channel.
It's my channel. I'll do it if I want. I brewed Super Friends because I was like, I saw Urza's as -10 and I was like, they tell you when you're deck building to not focus on a Planeswalker's ultimate. What if I only do that?
But he comes in at 2 or at 7 and can can activate twice on a turn.
Yes, it's so insane. So I was like, I got to do this. So I brewed around him and I was like, this is so sick. Like the first playtest I did, I was like, okay, guys, we have a lot of built-in tutors so we can get the might and weak stone so we can melt them. Let's do it. And then I drew for turn and I drew into the stone and I went, what's it like to be God's favorite? Like I was so happy. And like you can pretty easily consistently melt him. I was actually quite surprised. I mean, the deck wasn't cheap by any means. It's definitely not a budget deck, but his ability is really nice. He's very smooth. I like his cost reduction. I wish it extended to Planeswalkers. I get flavorfully why that's not the case. The activation twice per turn, I would actually forget to activate him twice because I'm so used to just doing Chandras and just going up once.
Right.
But strong. I mean, once you flip him, you get automatic blockers with those soldier tokens. You get card draw baked into him, which is great. Removal. I mean, like I love it. Like we popped in an Oath of Teferi, so you can activate the loyalty abilities even more times. Yeah, it was so good. Honestly, like I think he's a very interesting commander. And if I probably built him decently, he probably would have been even stronger than where we were at.
I think this is like unironically probably one of the better blue-white commanders that they've printed in a really long time. And I feel like they've printed some really just buck wild blue-white commanders recently. Like we've got Shorakai, we've got I mean, it's like Sten was in my Arden Crom deck for like a whole afternoon. And then they announced this card and I was like, well, Sten, it was good knowing you.
Like, what if we built you, but like God?
But what if we put you in the 99? What if you were in the 99, but instead better?
Yeah.
It's interesting. So do you have any like theories about, I was talking on Twitter earlier today. I know we're completely off topic now.
Yeah, but that's fine. It's your show. It's your show. You can do what you want. Like my stream.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
One of the things I was talking with somebody on Twitter, I forget who it was, earlier today, about like the story and what I think is going to happen.
Yeah.
And like, I made two realizations, one of which is that I don't think it's unreasonable to think that Nicol Bolas will be coming back soon. And Ugin, and the reason being is I don't know if you've looked up some of the lore behind what the Phyrexians are doing in Martian machines and stuff like that, but they are using the world tree to basically like connect all the planes.
Okay, that's terrifying. I love it.
And so that's what March of the Machines is going to be like, the magic secret wars. And my theory is they're going to try and get Nicol Bolas and Phyrexianize him.
Oh, that's freaky. I like that.
Because
I like that.
It is a plane that you can access. It's technically cut off from the Blind Eternities from Ugin, but that doesn't mean that the world tree couldn't presumably get there. So that is a theory. And the reason it is they recently just showed Nicol Bolas as Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh as a chibi.
Oh, yeah. The tinfoil hat comes out where the chibi walkers are going to be Phyrexianized.
Well, two of them already have. And the second secret layer. So the theory I've seen running around is that the second chibi secret layer is those who are the good guys who won't get Phyrexianized. And then they were like, oh, here's this Nicol Bolas dragon god. Don't worry about this, guys. And I feel in my bones that the Phyrexians are going to try and Phyrexianize Nicol Bolas.
Okay.
I feel in my bones they're going to try and complete him. The other thing that I think is going to happen is Urza is going to notice his student Teferi, who is at the time of the Brothers' War quite young, or maybe not even alive yet. But he's going to notice Teferi popping up doing timey-wimey bullshit. Yeah. And be like, something's up with that, and hitch a ride back to the future and create a new timeline. And I think this whole arc that they're preparing right now is so that they can completely hard reset the universe.
Okay. So, oh God, that stresses me out. Cause like I'm looking at the key art they released for March of the Machines. And you can see Essica, you can see Chandra, Minotaur Man. I don't know. One of the dragons from Kamigawa. You got Baral. You got that. I think her name is not Glissa.
Oh, that's
she's
Borborigmos is who that is.
And the girl who does plant stuff, she's from Strixhaven. I don't remember her name.
Yeah.
But that's interesting because this is like the Infinity War of like magic, I suppose. I think it's very interesting that we're getting that from Brothers' War, because in my mind, I'm like, from the minimum of lore I have from, before I was alive, Brothers' War, what we're experiencing in this next upcoming set has like already happened in history. It's like ancient history. Yeah. So the jump from that to March of the Machines makes me intrigued, because I'm like, All right. I know it's probably not going to happen, but now I already told you my theory on my stream. I'm going to tweak my theory after hearing your theory. We're going to meld those theories together like Urza.
You paid $7.
Yeah, I paid $7. I want Nicol Bolas to be possessed by the spirit of Yawgmoth. How
oh my
sick
God
would that be? How sick would that be if they like had him?
Or who would it be? Who did they say the Raven Man is? It's
I don't know.
No, they just said they just in the lore said who the Raven Man is.
He's elusive like my father. So
oh my God, Chase. It's Limdul.
Dad, I know you hear my content. I'm sorry.
So
wait, who'd you say?
Another theory is because so Limdul is who the Raven Man is.
Oh,
and part of Liliana's story in Dominaria United is stopping the Phyrexians from like getting to Limdul because he's trying to stop them from getting to him because he knows that. Well, one, he doesn't want to be, completed, but two, he also wants to take over the world himself.
Well, he should just hide in his vault. I mean, he has one.
Oh my gosh. He just needs to hold priority and take forever to resolve his spell.
Yeah. Easy peasy.
But I actually, your theory, I bet it would be Limdul if they were going to do that.
That'd be so sick.
That would be sweet. And especially since Bolas has technically lost his name. So if they brought Limdul back by like having him like inhabit Nicol Bolas's body.
Yeah. Oh my God. And then Kai is the hero because she's a ghost assassin.
Yes.
And that's how oh my God. Did we just predict? I think I would love it if that happened. I'm so sorry.
This turned into a Vorthos episode and I'm so here for it.
I am too. Also, I love that we're going to get Deadpool in freaking War of March of the Machines. It took me forever to realize that was Baral. That is some Deadpool looking.
I think it's wild that Baral and Chandra are going to be on the same side because I don't know if you've read the story of Kaladesh. But
I have.
Those two don't get along.
I would say that they have quite a little bit of a peeve against one another.
I would say they've had a little bit of history.
Well, yeah, and not like I don't think this is going to be an enemies to lovers situation anytime soon.
This is like
hella weird.
This is very much we either die or we work together situation.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's oh God, what's that audio in TikTok where he goes, "I'm a villain, not a monster." I feel like that's what Baral's gonna say.
Well, that about wraps things up for us here on this week's episode of The Mind Sculptors. Thank you so much for tuning in. I also want to thank our top tier patrons, Justin, Adam Hamden, David Sneevely, Dionysius, Jason Bialik, Matt Boehner, and Senior Coupon. Thank you to everybody who supports us, and thank you again for joining us. And from all of us here at the Mind Sculptors, I'm Callahan, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.